Well, greetings from Pennsylvania once again, and welcome to the new Bethel Church Cemetery. This is the old one over here. Back over that way is the old church. I think it's referred to as the new Bethel Union Church. But yeah, you know, it's October. We got a cemetery, so I think you know what that means. So yes, it is time to do some haunted videos again. I've actually been here at this cemetery before, years ago. It's associated with a story that I've touched on several times before, Schamberger's Tavern. It's actually a really interesting story, and the person of interest in that story is buried here, and perhaps some other people involved in that story, involuntarily involved in that story, are buried here too. But there's several other stories of hauntings here at this cemetery. So we're gonna walk around a little bit and at some point sit down and chat about these things. It's a cool spot out here though. So before we touch on the main story of this cemetery and the person of involvement, Mathias Schamberger, is actually a very interesting character. There are some other hauntings described here. One is just, you know, benign, you know, ghostly image of a woman, a young woman, in what they call mourning attire. Not like mourning, but like, you know, the sad type of mourning where she's wearing all black. Like she's mourning the loss of someone. How she walks through the cemetery and just kneels down at certain graves. Absolutely harmless. And there's another interesting one too. And that story mentions a young girl. I know it's almost a girl that looks like this, minus the wings, of course. But she's roughly the age. And they see her way at the top of the hill, they say. There's a larger monument up there. There's a couple up there. And that she just hangs around up there. Yeah, and the people that see her up there says she just kind of plays amongst the tombstones. Kind of like any little kid would if they were in here. Because if you're a small little kid, these tombstones, I think all of us, maybe when we were little, played hide and seek in a graveyard before. Maybe you haven't, but when you're little, tombstones make great places to hide behind. So maybe they used to see her up the top of the hill back up there, just playing around amongst the tombstones. Another, you know, completely benign, you know, experience that they have with her. Nothing horribly evil about her. Not unlike our other person we're going to talk about, who has quite an interesting backstory. I'm going to make my way to the top of the cemetery up there. Our person of interest, Mathias Schamberger, he is buried here, but you will not find his grave marker. His tombstone is long gone, and there's different stories behind why it's no longer here. And that's the whole part of the haunting and stuff like that. So I'm going to head up to the top. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit of the story as we make our way up there. I have filmed that whole story already before. It's called Schamberger's Tavern. I'll put the name down here because the name Schamberger is a little bit hard to spell and say. If you Google it or put it on YouTube, you probably find that video. We're actually filmed up at the tavern, which is a private home, so you can't actually go up to the house without disturbing the people there. But I did a whole video on that and what he did. But I'll talk a little bit about that in this video too, and some of the more hauntings that occur or perhaps have occurred at this place due to good old Mathias and what he did. Yeah, so in the 1800s, mid 1800s, you know, 1860s thereabouts, Mathias Schamberger owned a tavern. Of course, we're in Eckville, PA, near Hawk Mountain. So if you, down here is the Hawk Mountain Road. If you keep going up, you'd pass the old tavern on your right, I believe. It was actually built in the 1790s, so it's an old building. There's really no place to pull over on the side of the road to view it. But yeah, him and his wife lived there for a while, had a tavern. But some interesting things started to happen there. But man, check out the views of the Pennsylvania countryside out there. That's Berks County out there. Up top there, that's the pinnacle. Awesome place to hike to. Amazing views up there. Beautiful stone church. Farmland. Beautiful place to be buried if you think about it. Of course, you can see this side of the cemetery is the old side. Over there's the newer section. So in here somewhere, Mathias is buried. I think closer to towards the bottom of the hill, maybe. Like I said, you won't find his actual marker here. I learned that the hard way. First time I filmed here, I spent who knows how long looking for it, only to discover that it's no longer here. He's here, but not his marker. Yeah, so we're nearing the top of the hill here. I'm just wondering going back to the ghost of the little girl, I'm just wondering which monument they're talking about. I mean, that's the largest one right there. That obelisk looking thing with the statue on top. So I wonder if this is the one, the place where they see that little girl playing around. Yeah, and here's one of those interesting ones with a tombstone shaped like a tree. The woodsman. Oh, someone, yeah, something to do with woodsman of the world, I think. Someone sent me a message about these one time. By the love. Yeah, it looks like a little tree with ivy and stuff, even a rope. I mean, that's stone. That's cool. If I end up buried in an actual graveyard someday, it'd be cool to have a stone like that, looking like a tree. Yeah, so here's the monument that I'm kind of wondering if this is where they see the little girl. The statue up the top. Benjamin Levin and his wife Anna. Alright, but like I said, let's find a place to sit. Man. What a place to tell a story. Oh yeah, just one quick correction. I called this Hawk Mountain Road down here. That's actually the new Bethel Road, the new Bethel Church Road, not Hawk Mountain Road. Hawk Mountain Road is at the end of this road, so just one quick correction there. Just realized that. Yeah, so good old Mathias Schamberger and his tavern. Well, what kicks this off, I guess, is people started to notice that folks who stopped by his tavern tended to go missing and were never seen again. Them, their horse, and all their stuff. And accounts say that Mathias was often seen selling stuff like a peddler in town and stuff. And the stuff he was selling, people kind of recognized it as belonging to some of these people that went missing. So people started putting two and two together, and the idea was that Mathias was, doing away, if we can word it that way, with the people that stopped at his tavern. Not necessarily everybody, because that would make it too obvious, but the idea is that he would feed people and with food and drink of an alcoholic nature, and to the point where they're stuffed and sleepy, and then they would fall asleep, and then he would, I think one story said he would take them to the barn across the road, take care of them with an axe, and then do away with them. Some accounts say he dropped, there was like an old well in the property that he would get rid of people or just throw parts of them out in the woods for the animals to eat, the vultures and stuff, and that's how he got rid of their remains. So yeah, that's how the story goes. I think in actuality, he was never actually convicted of those crimes. He was highly suspected of it. I think the true story goes, but as with all these stories, there's many other versions of what happens. And even since I'd done my initial research several years ago, there's new versions of the story that have come out. And that's the way it is with these stories. Actually, speaking of vultures, let's see if we can see that one flying off. You can see it. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it just flew overhead. Alright. Maybe that was the spirit of Mathias. Yeah, he's still out there. I don't know if you can see him on the camera flying. You can see him in the field. He's going to fly right above the church right now. Out in the field there. And off into the trees. We were just talking about vultures, and there's one right there. Yeah, so maybe Mathias knows we're talking about him out here, huh? Something to think about. There's some crows back there now, too. Yeah, someone told me if you see crows in a cemetery that means a certain thing, but I forget what it is. Anyway, like I said, there's newer stories now. Some stories, since I've done my initial research, like there's new versions of the story. And one says that Mathias killed up to 200 people now, and that he was America's first serial killer. Those stories are a bit exaggerated. If indeed he did take care of those folks that came to his inn, it was only maybe like a dozen or so, not like 200. But and there's one grisly story too that he says this one was pretty gross, but the one visitor at the inn was being fed sausage. They called it German sausage, until he realized that there were no animals on the farm, because Schamberger told him that he made it himself with the animals on the farm, but the dude remembered that when he had put his horse in the barn and stuff, that there were no animals on the farm. And then he remembered the stories he had heard about the tavern, and he realized where the sausage had probably come from. And I guess the story says he took off out of there like crazy, because yeah, he wanted nothing to do with that, which is understandable. So yeah, think about that next time someone offers you sausage. Think about that. Where did that sausage come from? Anyway, most likely not from, well, you know where. All right, but that's just whether that, I don't know if that story's true or not, but that's just one of the stories you read when you do a little bit of research on Mathias. So in actuality, he was never actually convicted of those crimes. I know there are other stories out there saying that on his deathbed he confessed to killing over like 200 people, but that story is most likely not true. But like I said, he is buried in here somewhere, and of course there are stories about that. They're saying stories that when he was buried, lightning struck his tombstone and turned it into ash, and that's why it's not here anymore. Or one story says that as they were lowering him into the grave, lightning struck and flipped his body upside down, so now he's buried face down instead of face upwards. You know, stories like that. Lots of them involving lightning. There's that vulture again, flying up top there. It goes up into the open sky there. Another story claims that that bolt of lightning was God showing his displeasure at the idea that Mathias was being buried in holy ground, like in a churchyard, because God knew what Mathias had done. But when you have someone of interest like this buried in a graveyard here that's accessible, tombstones like that tend to gather unwanted attention. I think someone told me why it was taken away. I think the church might have taken it away, or else it was stolen by people. I think people were maybe vandalizing it, or a lot of times tombstones like that, people try to chip off souvenirs of it, you know, take a piece of it home with them. So stuff like that was happening to it. So I'm pretty sure, I think last time I filmed here, someone mentioned that the church just took it down just to do away with all those issues. So that's most likely the real reason why his tombstone is not here anymore. I haven't read any stories that say Mathias himself haunts this cemetery, but if they're not out there already, I'm sure as time goes on, as this story gets more and more embellished, that those stories will come about that say he is here. But currently I haven't come across any that say he himself haunts this cemetery. I have come across people or stories that say some of his victims haunt this place though, that they're buried here. Yeah, the one story says that after he died that the police, I'm getting screamed at by the Blue Jays, they don't want me telling this story. Yeah, one story says that after he was buried here that the police searched the property, found a bunch of bones and human remains in the woods and everything that were his victims, and that they were placed here in this cemetery because this is the closest church to the tavern, and that those victims themselves haunt this place. Not so sure about that story either, because like I said, he wasn't convicted of any crimes, so I don't know if, I forget if the police ever investigated the place or not, where he lived, investigated those stories. Not sure about that one. But it makes for an intriguing story that his victims, or what was left of them, the pieces that were left of them, were buried in here like in unmarked graves. And that they're still restless from their ordeal, I guess you could call it. Or maybe that's them screaming at me back there, the Blue Jays. Or maybe it's Mathias again. Yeah, first it was a vulture, then there's the crows, and now there's the Blue Jays. They don't like me being here. So I'm just going to sit up here for a little bit more, just to take the experience in. You know, I don't feel anything. I don't feel any presence up here or nothing. I wasn't really expecting to. Of course, I'm not up here at night or in the evening either. Like I said in some of my other videos, I do believe in what I'll call the spiritual world. But a lot of these hauntings, I don't really believe in. I like the stories that they tell, though. Most hauntings have a story behind them, either something historical or something tragic that makes for a good story. Not that there isn't. I mean, I have been at places where I've felt, you know, like when I visit, like I just recently did the Johnstown flood. I visited the plot of the unknown where over 700 unidentified people were buried, and I got a little choked up there. You just feel, I don't know, there's like a presence there. You feel like a heaviness. I felt the same way when I visited the Flight 93 Memorial. Just, you know, I was talking with my friend John about this. Like some of these places, there just seems to be some kind of energy there. I know energy is probably not the greatest word to use, but you just feel something at those places. Well, I moved over into the shade here a little bit. The sun just came out. It was behind the clouds most of the day. But yeah, you know, if you do decide to come here yourself, as always, just, you know, be respectful of the church grounds in the cemetery. You don't need to come here and do anything stupid. Be mindful that this place does not belong to you. Well, I do believe it is time for me to head out. It is a really nice place just to sit. There's that vulture again. He just keeps flying around. But yeah, it'd be cool to... Be neat to sit up here in the evening with a cup of hot coffee and just sit here maybe, see if anything does show up. But like I said, I don't really... In most cases, where I film these types of videos, I don't really feel anything. But yeah, it's one of these, like I said, I love these haunted stories too, because even with this one, there is truth to it. You know, if Mathias Schamberger is a real person, or was a real person, his tavern is a real person, those crimes he committed are probably true. You know, like I said, not like hundreds of them, but you know, at least 11 people probably, or so. So there's truth to it. But with all these stories and legends, it does get embellished over the years by folks. So it helps you to visit cool, like, you know, awesome locations like this too. These old cemeteries, beautiful views. So that's why I love these haunted stories. So just one last look down there. Yeah, up there's the vulture again, flying up that way. There he is, circling around. I'm hoping you can see that on camera. It's hard to tell sometimes when you're looking on the little screen here. Yeah, but once again, up there's the pinnacle. Beautiful stone church, Pennsylvania countryside. Well, now there are a whole bunch of vultures flying around up there. I hope you can see them on camera. Just kind of swirling around in circles up there, heading off that way. Yeah, those are all vultures. So yeah, it is time to go home and have some coffee. Have some coffee at home. I know we didn't really look at the tombstones too much. There are some old ones here, but I was here more just to tell a story. Alright, we're gonna walk back down the hill, get back to Naomi down there, and as always, thanks for coming along. Cool place to visit, but like I said, be respectful of the place, and hopefully I'll see you around. I know tomorrow I'm gonna be filming with some friends again, and then actually I'm hoping to get to Gettysburg maybe next week and do some more haunted videos down that way. I know some people have asked about that, so that is the plan. So maybe some more haunted videos from Gettysburg this October. All right, I'll see you around.